Sometimes I feel I've got the best job in the world. I'm actually working here in the heart of the most beautiful part of this country, rural Wiltshire, at the home of Ken Payne. And we're here to see his magnificent Kendale O-Gauge layout. Truly a layout of a lifetime. Built over the last 30 years. It's part of a new series that we're introducing whereby we have the layout of the lifetime feature in the magazine as a supplement, but also as a complement to this, Warner's Digital is producing a series of layout of the lifetime DVDs. So not only do you see the pictures in BRM, but you also see the whole thing moving. And this really does move. Anyway, it's up there in a purpose-built building. See you soon. We're obviously inside now this magnificent railway route, and Ken Payne, the great Ken Payne, ouch, is my host. Now it's the first time I've met Ken, but that's not to say not the first time I've known you or known about you because of your writings in, dare I say it, Good Old Railway Modeller from many years ago. But you describe Kendale, this O-Gauge, as the last great project.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain why?
Well, in my time of life, there's certainly no chance of ever starting another one.
I don't know.
Well, even if I lived long enough, I wouldn't have the ability now anyway. So, I'm 86 and...
you don't look it.
It's getting on a bit, you know.
No, you don't look it. Does he? No, I don't think so. But it's O-Gauge, obviously. Now, my first memories of your writings, you were EM gauge, if I recall.
It's going back to the 1950s, the tiling branch.
Well, I'm 62, so I can remember the 1950s. Yeah.
Long, long ago.
But you've chosen O-Gauge, you have the space, but it's not your first love, this railway, is it? Midland or ex-Midland?
No, really. I'm a Great Western enthusiast. I was born and bred within a few hundred yards of the Bristol-London main line, and I still love the Great Western engines now. But when I started modelling in O-Gauge, the only kits available at that time were in Midland, and so I started modelling in Midland.
So when did you start in O-Gauge then? Did you sell the EM gauge or just get...
yeah, something that taken about 10 years to build, and I sold it for 25 quid.
But what made you change to O-Gauge? I mean,
I dread to say this to a double O enthusiast, but after sort of lifetime modelling in the smaller scale, it just became a toy train set, and it just ceased to have any interest as a model railway.
But is that inevitable? I know it's a cliche, but I go to Telford each year, and usually people, as they get older, or more mature should I say, turn to the larger scales because their faculties diminish, they find it easier to see, easier to hold the components. I mean, I built in O-Gauge, and I don't think I'll go to it, other than, I have to say, as a photographer and as an observer, it has a much greater presence. But you chose the Midland then because of the availability?
Just the availability of the kits at that time.
And this was what, 25 years ago or so?
25, 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Because that was for the Garden Railway originally.
Yes.
Before this.
Oh, that's the one that the cows smashed, isn't it?
That's the one the cows got over.
Yes. But did you get compensation?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I should have, shouldn't I?
What did the farmer say? You shouldn't build an outdoor layout in Wiltshire.
I don't think I ever told him. I wasn't getting on too well with him in those days. We got on better later on.
But you must have had some love for the LMS or ex-LMS. I mean, in conversation over lunch, you said you were great friends with dear old David Jenkins.
I lived in Keynsham and I worked at Yate during the war.
Yes.
And so I used to travel on the LMS to get to work and get back. So, of course, in those days, I mean, everything was filthy, dirty, and very run down. But so I had
an affinity. Yes, an affinity with it. But this is certainly not the LMS in Somerset and Gloucestershire. This is the Dales, the Derby Dales.
It's supposed to be somewhere in the Dales. An imaginary settlement, Carlisle line. It doesn't exist.
It certainly looks that way to me, and as we'll see later, I mean, you based your buildings and signals and structures and so on the Settle and Carlisle, with a station based on the Settle and Carlisle, and this reminds me of Hellifield. We're looking out over here.
Well, the engine shed actually was at the remotest end of the Midland Railway. It was at Gurnos in Swansea.
Really?
That's what it's modelled on.
It shows how much I know. So that's South Wales, and I was thinking it's in the middle of Yorkshire.
I mean, like all railways, they all had their standard.
Yes, standard. I mean, as we'll see, I can see typical hipped roof Midland box over here, another one down there.
All the buildings are based on buildings that actually did exist or still do.
Now this is a big layout, even by O-gauge standards, although some O-gauge layouts would fit on no more than a couple of ironing boards. But this is all your own work, and do you operate it then solely, or do you have groups round? Or you mentioned a friend had a Great Western loco.
I have visiting groups from time to time, just come and see the trains go by. I don't operate it in the sense of playing trains. The thing is designed to simply watch trains going by, which is what I used to enjoy doing in the days of steam.
Oh, yes.
And no, I don't play trains with it.
Do you not?
No, I just run trains.
Well, isn't that playing trains? I play. Play trains.
Don't get me wrong, it's playing trains all right. But in the
you don't have an operating timetable.
Don't have an operating timetable.
No. But all the signals work, and all the point work is integrated with them and everything.
The only thing that doesn't work are the little ground signals, and there's about 30 odd of those.
And
really,
that would drive you mad.
It just drive me mad.
Yes.
I never get round to making sure they're all on and off at the right places.
Ken, it's been a pleasure. Well, it will be a pleasure to watch them go by. So, maybe have a play with them, please.
It's a pleasure having you. I hope you'll be entertained.
We will be. Anyway, we'll watch them.
Though not an actual location, Ken's Railway leaves us in no doubt as to where it's set. The Settle and Carlisle section of the old Midland Railway. In this series of views, Stanya's pioneer rebuilt Royal Scot, the original high-pressure Fury, 6170 British Legion, has charge of an express. As well as the expresses, there were the usual all-station stoppers, as illustrated here by this 4F, in earlier LMS condition with its number still on the tender. And as often happened on the real railway, there were connections and simultaneous departures, with, in this case, a pair of locals heading off for their respective destinations. Excitement is provided by the frequent passing of trains of all sorts. The slow-moving mainline local is passed by a fully fitted express meat train, hauled by a Stanya Black 5 460. The train is complete with full vacuum brake connections. Ken explains that it takes half an hour to couple the whole rake together.
Well, Ken was standing next to the main station, obviously Kendale, named after you, I assume?
Well, it's not my idea, but yeah, a friend of mine named it Kendale.
Well, it sounds exactly like a real place. And it shouts out to me instantly, Midland Railway, Settle and Carlisle. Footbridges Midland, this very typical running in board. Was that unique to the Midland, that style?
Yeah, really, as far as I know.
Yes, so you've got sort of four faces and the Settle and Carlisle building. And the footbridge you made, obviously, and that was...
I do, with great trouble.
Why?
It's made from etched brass sheet for the lattice work. It was a nightmare to cut it all out and get it soldered together. And in fact, I was sort of make another logo and make another footbridge.
But you have to have a footbridge, yeah?
Oh yeah,
and the Midland, in their wisdom, did lattice ones.
They did.
Well, the Great Western did a lattice type as well, with a roof, didn't they? Not a lattice. Not as complex.
No,
so Swindon knew what they were doing, and Derby was a bit of a muddle. Is that it?
Well, Derby was
heresy. Yeah. And the station building then, that's what, plasticard, card?
It's based on plywood, covered with card and embossed Faller paper.
And the barge boards, are they all individually cut out?
All individually cut out with a...
Have you not gone nuts? That would drive me mad.
Haven't you noticed? I've made metal formers and come out with a craft knife.
Oh, I see.
I couldn't do it without cutting around a former.
That would drive me balmy, that. But I mean, those decorative barge boards are very, very much the thing.
Pure Midland, it sets
yes. And that's sort of the secondary building is much, much smaller and again very, very typical, isn't it?
It's a copy of a typical Midland building.
And the buildings then were made from drawings and photographs?
Yes, they were.
But not site visits? You didn't?
No, none.
It's a bit far from Wiltshire.
That's right. The only one's imagination is the pub, the Midland Inn, which, from my rare visits to Yorkshire, I think it's
thatch in the Pennines, in the High Pennines.
Don't they have thatch in the Pennines?
I wouldn't have thought so.
Well, I saw one, so that's my prototype.
That'll do.
The arrangement of bridges by the loco shed is redolent of Bristol Barrow Road, here passed by a Stanier 8F280 on a lengthy mineral train. It runs on by the extensive sidings, with a high-level terminus of Glenside visible above, and the canal basin alongside. The line's principal express, the Dalesman, bursts into view behind Duchess Class 6233, Duchess of Sutherland, still in original condition with single chimney. Strictly speaking, the big Stanier 462s were West Coast main line locos, but this one must be on a diversion. Like the late David Jenkinson, Ken is happy to run funny trains, strictly speaking out of period. Witness then this beautiful Whale precursor 440 on its rake of exquisitely painted London and North Western Railway carriages.
Clearly we're standing next to what I call the most rural part of the layout. I mean, the general scenery is all excellent, but we're right out in the country. And in front of us we've got a farm. And what's the inspiration for that, please, Ken?
Never really is, my dear wife, Peggy. Peggy doesn't very often come in here. She's never really interested in my modelling at all. But sometimes, like this afternoon, she'll come up and bring a cup of coffee.
Excellent, I have to say.
She came in one
The
afternoon.
hospitality here is second to none, so
yeah.
praise to her.
All part of the service. She came in one afternoon, put the coffee down, and on a rare occasion she stopped and paused and had a look around. And she looked up here where there was none of this, just fields. She says, all too green, Kent, all too green. We'll do something with it. Out she went. I looked, she's absolutely right, it is all too green. So I had a book of paintings by Don Brecken with a Cornish farm in it, which in effect is that one, modified to give it a North Country architecture effect. And I built that. And then behind you, I put in the bridge and the road and the cottage and the garden and apple trees, the apples. And yes, it broke it up very nicely. And,
but this must be a railway modeller or a railway enthusiast's house.
now, why do you say that?
Well, you've got a main line on one aspect and a branch line on the other. And no, it's wonderful. It
Well,
really
no,
is.
he's a gardener, there he is. Look at this.
Well, yes, yes.
But in actual fact, the house is modelled on the end of our house. I measured it up and copied it.
Oh, I see.
Everything's different as the roof of the chimney.
And the tunnel mouth, that's obviously Midland practice, is it? Sort of based on things.
Based on the photograph.
Yes.
Yep.
And we've mentioned before that the lower quadrant signals. You've not been tempted to have the odd upper quadrant, have you?
Not really.
Because it's 1934.
Well, just pre-war. 34 to 39.
Right. So there might have been the occasional upper
Oh yes,
quadrant.
there are some upper quadrants, but I don't know, I just haven't got around to putting any in. I mean, they were all done as a job lot. In fact, the whole layout was built in pieces. The baseboard was put down, the track was put down, the track was ballasted, and various parts of the scenery were done.
Yes.
And I didn't do a bit of this and a bit of that, although I was sometimes tempted to.
But it's all
if I'd broken it up, I'd never finish it.
No, but it's all very, very subtle. And you've used, are these scenic powders then you've used?
Yes.
And I mean, they look very, very convincing. You've not been tempted with some of the Barry Norman ideas of carpet underlay and so on for longer grass and so on?
I have, but I'm just really too impatient to use it. I mean,
what do you think? It takes too long?
It takes too long, and I mean, this is... what I'm really aiming for is an overall picture which is reasonably convincing.
And in fairness, at this time, railways were meticulously maintained. There'd be a track gang and a side gang, and it used to be a prize length, didn't it?
It did indeed.
So any underbrush or stuff would have been cut right down.
Well, the embankments and cuttings should be far rougher than they are. First to say that.
Well, that's...
Maybe I got around to put some more bushes or something on it one of these days.
Just one or two, but on the overall impression. I think you have to adopt that. I use this word again, pragmatism. I mean, this is a vast railway. If you were doing every square inch to the nth degree, you'd have to live to be as old as Methuselah, wouldn't you? And
I don't
you'd
think
still
I have
never...
any particular desire to do that.
The branch train ambles gently through the scenery on its short journey from Kendale to Glenside, behind an ancient Dealey outside framed 060. The coaches are beautifully painted in full LMS-lined Crimson Lake by Alan Brackenborough. Anyway, please enjoy the passage of these wonderful O-gauge trains. Once again, the Duchess on the Dalesman. But it's not just about the trains. Please observe the meticulous attention to static detail. Light engine movements, as in the case with this 2P440, takes place continuously on and off shed, with proper procedures for loco disposal observed at all times. Obviously, tank locos don't need to use the turntable. Ken's locos are wonderfully well made by him and superbly painted by Brack. Just relish the delights of this Fowler 4MT 264T. The Pioneer rebuilt Scott once more, still with its original single chimney and steeply raked outside steam pipes. Yet another superb loco from the same sources. As mentioned, all signals are fully operational, ex-Midland lower quadrants, in this case integrated with the level crossing gates at the end of the branch. And Journey's End. The usual run-round facilities for engine release are provided at Glenside, ready for the return working.
So, there you have it, a magnificent model railway. Ken's called it his last great project. I would just say it's a great project because he's still carrying on. Even in his mid-80s, he's building locomotives. You'll see one of the shots that shows a coal tank, just made. An engineer by profession, an engineer by trade, and it shows in this marvellous model railway. For despite my presence, and I usually put the mark of Cain on a model railway, it has worked magnificently, as I'm sure you'll see from the DVD. If you enjoyed as much as I've enjoyed presenting this and watching it, and photographing it, then my job is done. And this is the first, remember, of a series that Warner's is producing. The next one, I'm sure, will be up to this standard. I hope so. We're not quite sure what is the next one, but we'll keep you posted. But it'll be a hard act to follow. I've enjoyed it immensely. This is wonderful. It captures the LMS just before the war, the spirit of railways when they were at their peak in this country. Anyway, really do enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next one. Ken, that has been magnificent.
It's been lovely meeting you.
Fantastic, and it really is a great model railway, one of the best I've seen.
It's a great compliment
May I?
from you.
It works superbly. After you, sir.